Annotating. It's a topic with mixed reviews, but I think a lot of readers are starting to see more pros and less cons to the practice. There is no right or wrong way to do it, and everyone does it differently. In this video, I'll be talking about Danmei novels specifically, but if you want a more generic introduction to the topic, I recommend this video by Plant-Based Bride. I love her content on reading, annotating, journaling, and the likes, and it's a great video for an introduction to the topic. She goes into things like levels in annotating, pens, highlighters, tab types, and many more. There are a myriad of reasons why someone would want to annotate. I think a good way to approach it is to answer the question of why you're doing it. It's a really basic question, but it gives you direction on how to go about doing it and what topics to focus on. I'll use the word tab or tabbing a lot in this video, and that just refers to these mini sticky pieces of paper and the process of using one of them to mark a specific part of a book based on a system you create. Off the top of my head, some reasons that come to mind as to why someone would want to annotate are for reviews. Maybe you're a book blogger or content creator and you want to be able to return to specific parts you want to highlight in your review. It could also be for retention. This might be the case if you're reading a series and you want to annotate major plot points that will make it easier to get right into the next release in the series. This was the reason that appealed to me most initially, and I took it even further recently and did a video on TikTok summarizing the third book of 𝕬𝕗𝕗 Autumns on the release date for book 4, and that summary was done based on my annotations. You could also be annotating for character analysis, research, or just because. There are many other reasons that you could have, but it all boils down to what information you'd like to recall or return to, and what exactly you would like to get from that information. Once you have identified your why, how you go about doing it will be a tad bit easier. As for how I do it, in the past, my system was super basic. I was just slowly getting used to it, and a part of me was not fully sold on marking up my books, so I just added tabs without necessarily assigning topics to different colors. I tabbed major plot points that felt important, and I just moved on. But I've since then learned to appreciate some great benefits to the practice. Currently, I mostly tab for reviews and retention, but also for plot breakdown and character analysis because they're topics I enjoy, and they both tie into reviewing now that I use the 𝕬𝕗𝕗 system. I'll give a few examples of books I've annotated, one from when I started with no topic key and then moved to more recent annotations and how I pick my topics. The first Danmei I tried my hand at annotating was Remnants of Filth. You can see I have just 2 tab colors, and I think I just alternated between both colors at the time. I had no topic key and was mainly focused on tabbing off major plot points. I also didn't write in the book. All my writing was done on the tab itself to remind me why I marked off that specific part of the book. In comparison, I now use topic keys and I write and highlight when I annotate. I started with what I was comfortable with and slowly worked my way up to a method that made sense to me, which is important. These are 2 series with only 1 volume out in them so far, and I went into the both of them completely blind. I always start with topics for characters because I like character analysis. Then I'll add one for major plot points, which is great for ongoing series. That way I can remember the most important things that happened in the book before moving on to the next one. Because I do reviews, I also add a tab for that, and it's usually to mark specific details I want to discuss in a review. Those are the main topics I start with, but the synopsis can help with identifying other topics, and I'll add others as I read. The synopsis for Guardian, for example, suggested a romantic plot with word choices like immediately intrigued, powerful attraction, and a connection impossible to deny. So I added a tab for romantic development. I also added one for a secondary character later because his character felt important, and now that I'm more familiar with the story, a tab that I'll add as I read other installments will be for Chinese mythology because the book delves into that quite a bit. Similarly, for Case File Compendium, I started with the 4 main topics I usually focus on, Then I added one for psychology based on the synopsis. Another one I'm slowly starting to add as my interest in language learning grows is this tab here: language, culture, and history. Sometimes reading literature that originates from a language you're learning or would like to learn can be a good form of immersion, which was why I added that tab. And the last one I added is for a secondary character that felt important to assign a tab to. You can also see that I bunched topics into one tab in two cases. That is just a personal preference. I knew those tabs wouldn't get as much use if I separated the topics individually, and that was why I did that. Those were for new series, but I also have some ongoing series with recent releases that I really enjoyed annotating, and I was already pretty familiar with the plot for all of them. I will start with Remnants of Filth again. I stuck with the 4 major topics in book 3 because the world building has been simple so far and I didn't feel the need to add anything else. But this is a huge step up from how I annotated the first book. The next one here is Thousand Autumns. I once again had the 4 major topics. Then I had one for martial arts because that is a topic that is heavily discussed in the series, as well as one for character development. That one I initially added for Yan Wuxi when I started reading the series, but I've mostly used it for Shen Chao. In hindsight, one that would have been interesting to add for a series like Thousand Autumns with such extensive world building is history. It will be interesting to match the locations used in the series to Chinese history to either try to determine what period the story is set in or see how much of the world in the series is fictional. The same thing applies for Stars of Chaos. Very extensive world building, so I'll likely add a tab for history in the next installment. For this second book, I had my 4 main topics. Plot and steampunk were lumped into one tab, then character and romantic development were lumped together as well. There isn't always rhyme or reason as to how I designate topics to the tabs, I just do it. But another topic that will be interesting for Stars of Chaos as I get more familiar with the series is the topic of colonialism and imperialism, because that's where the story is headed. Those were all topics for books I'm reading, but while I was planning out this video, another one that came to mind was for the novel Peach Blossom Dead by 𝕬𝕚𝕚𝕚. My foray into Chinese literature originated from a love of Chinese dramas, and one of my favorites is Eternal Love, also known as 3 Lives, 3 Worlds, 10 Mouths of Peach Blossoms. And why am I bringing this up? I found out last year that the novel that inspired the drama, which I have also read, was plagiarized from Peach Blossom Dead. So when I eventually read Peach Blossom Dead, I think it would be interesting to have a tab for plagiarism to track the similarities between the story and the one for To the Sky Kingdom, which is the novel the drama was based on. So those were some of the ways I picked the topics I want to base my annotations on. I know that was a lot if you're just starting out, but my one piece of advice will be don't aim for perfection. Just make it work for you and have fun with it, and you will eventually figure out a method that is unique to you. That was the point of me showing how my annotations have evolved in the past year. You can make it as simple or as complicated as you want it to be, but at the end of the day, this is a way for you to interact with what you're reading. There are many other things I can talk about in regards to annotating, but I've decided to focus on how I pick my topics in this video. If anyone is interested, I can talk about other things in the future, but I hope I was able to answer some questions you have on this topic. And I plan to do a real-time video of me reading and annotating a book where I can provide a more in-depth view of my annotating process someday. If there's something you're curious about that I didn't cover, feel free to ask me about it in the comments. Thank you for watching, and whatever day you find yourself watching this, make it a great one, and I'll see you in my next video.